decision to save lives. All right, here you see Goodman glance to his left toward the Senate chambers. That's where lawmakers and staff were sheltering. He noticed it's unguarded, so he lures the angry armed mob away from that entrance to a back corridor where he found reinforcement. He prods the leader of that group basically to cause them to follow him. For 85 seconds, a lone black police officer faced down a crazed mob of violent white extremists. Didn't lose his cool, didn't take out his gun. Officer Goodman's quick thinking may have saved lives. He was the only thing standing between that mob, possibly, and democracy in action. Americans can sleep better at night knowing that police officers like Eugene Goodman exist in this world, and there are plenty more cops cut from that cloth. But the reality is there were law enforcement officers at the Capitol who sympathized with the white supremacists and may have even aided in the insurrection. So far, 2 Capitol police officers have been suspended. At least 10 more are being investigated for misconduct. One officer was suspended for taking a selfie with a rioter. The second suspended officer allegedly wore a MAGA hat and directed people around the Capitol building. That's according to Congressman Tim Ryan, who's the chairman of the subcommittee that oversees the Capitol Police. 2 off-duty police officers from Virginia are facing federal charges for participating in the riot and taking pictures and posting them to Facebook, which helped get them arrested. An off-duty Houston police officer resigned on Thursday over his alleged role in the Capitol riots. Houston Police Chief Art Acevedo says the officer will likely face federal charges. Black cops have been warning about racist officers within the Capitol Police Department for decades. According to a report by ProPublica, quote, since 2001, hundreds of black officers had sued the department for racial discrimination. They allege that white officers called black colleagues slurs like the N-word, and that one officer found a hangman's noose on his locker. It's time for police departments across the United States to take an inventory of the men and women who wear a badge. Cops take an oath of honor at the beginning of their law enforcement careers. It reads, I will never betray my badge, my integrity, my character, or the public trust. I will always have the courage to hold myself and others accountable for our actions. I will always uphold the Constitution, my community, and the agency I serve. The officers who participated in the attempted takedown of our government might as well rip up their oath of honor, because there is nothing honorable about dismantling democracy. I want to bring in Sonia Pruitt. She's a retired captain at the Montgomery County Police Department, very close by to where I am in Maryland. She's also a founder of the Black Police Experience and former chair of the National Black Police Association. Sonia, good to have you here. You've talked about this for a long time. There are a lot of black police officers in the United States, and many of them feel this, and they feel this pressure between holding their departments to account and their colleagues to account, and this thin blue line to which they are held to stand firm with.
Yes, thank you for having me, Ali. This is a really, really important topic. It is true that black officers have been complaining about discrimination and bias in their police departments since time untold. The profession itself was never created to embrace us. And so we had to fight to become police officers in the 1800s. And so here we are, and it's 2021. And I tell you, black police officers are having the same fights probably that our police ancestors had back in the 1800s, trying to do our jobs, be accountable, taking that oath of office seriously, but at the same time having to fight discrimination and bias.
But discrimination and bias for a police officer, a black police officer, is different than it is for me, for instance, because if I have colleagues who are racist, generally speaking, my life's not endangered. If you're a black police officer who draws attention to racism on your force, you could be imperiled.
Yes, and I would be one of those police officers. Maybe 20 years ago or so, I brought attention to something that wasn't even race-related. However, that gave these officers an opening to attack me. There were threats on my family. I was called out of my name as a black woman. And it made it very, very difficult for me to navigate through the police department in terms of making rank and promotion and assignments after that.
Let's talk about police unions who have been very strong and vocal in the last year, sometimes not on the right side of things. Where are they here about rooting out the racism from their forces?
You know, police unions have been eerily quiet, especially since last week. A couple of unions came out in support of the rioters who were taking the Capitol by siege. And then after they found out that that was not popular, they became very, very silent. But unions have a lot of power. Police unions have a lot of power in this country. And, you know, I want to just point this out to the public. To actually attack this systemic racism issue in policing, there has to actually be an acknowledgement. If there ever is an actual acknowledgement and, you know, to make some sort of reconciliation with people in this country, not just Black people, but the country as a whole, then there's going to have to be some deep work done state by state even. For instance, in the state of Maryland, we have laws. We have the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights. You have a police commission. Then you have the union. Then you have police leadership. All of those things can be obstacles to handling this systemic racism issue.
You know, it must have been interesting for some of the police where these protesters who, in theory, were, you know, thin blue line people, supporters of the police, were then turning on them and threatening to shoot them. In fact, there was one white protester who was being tackled by the police and held down, and he yelled out, it was a remarkable piece of video, I don't know if you saw it, he yelled out, "You're treating me like a Black person." And it's like, wow, that was very, very telling.
It is very, very telling. I mean, you know, the people who participated last Wednesday knew exactly why they were there. They may not have said it out loud, but white supremacy and nationalism in this country is at the base of many, many of our issues. And it must have been an eye-opener for white officers to be attacked that way when all this time they have been feeling, you know, safe as well. But now they know what it feels like to be a Black officer. And see, with Black officers, sometimes those threats come from your peers.
Yeah, no kidding. Sonia Pruitt, you've been talking about it for a long time with us. I didn't think we'd have this conversation, but thank you as always. Sonia Pruitt is a former national chairperson of the Black Police Officers Association and the founder of the Black Police Experience. Well, the right wing has used images of violence to spin stories about protests, creating narratives that undermine the fight for justice and equal rights for all. And yet they are unwilling to condemn the pro-Trump mob that overtook the Capitol last week, even as they rioted and threatened lives on the Hill. The truth about contextualizing violence is next.